Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Culture isn't just one activity. I mean, I've always felt like it's 1,000 little things that you do, conversations, quotes, drills, games, meetings, all of that put together. But sometimes there are more orchestrated events or things that you can do to maybe hit home or get culture going. Anything that you do, activities that you really like that builds it up.
Well, yes. I mean, in a perfect world, you would have a lot of time to go do a retreat, to go do different activities. But, personally, I think that one of the greatest things that, from small college basketball level now, where we can maximize our impact is breaking bread, eating, as many meals as we can, whether it's at my house, my assistant coach's house, it's, bringing in something to campus where we, just sit around together and just share that time together. That's probably the biggest bang for our buck that I've found. Now, don't get me wrong, we have activities and we have games that we'll play. We'll do, try to get away on some, little road trips where we can just go be together.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's what can we do the most often and the most frequently, and just maximize that time together. Having them engage, putting the phones away and just talking, being there together. Tell me about yourself.
No, I love that you shared that. I think so many times we think about we've got to do something to build our culture, set it. They think about like budget breakers, like things like we need to get some donors in. What can we do? Like, I think you're right on the money. What can you do with the resources? And one of the biggest resources we have is time. Yeah. And so how do we show them that we care? Well, we give them time. And then I love what you said about, eating at different places. Coach K, I remember just a random story that I heard about him in practice, he would have them talk, but at different spots in the gym, not always in the center, not always on the baseline, sometimes in the locker room, but they'd always move. And I kind of wondered, like, wait, what's the reasoning behind that? But I think it's kind of like maybe they come to your house and they see you in a different way. It's different. And they get to almost like if you were a 3D picture, they've always seen this version of you with a clipboard talking about basketball, but now they see another version. And it's kind of like when high school kids see us outside of the school and they look at us like, what are you doing here? Like, no, we don't live up here at the school. We actually have lives. But no, that's a great idea, Coach. Don't get into style of play very often, but I do love to learn, favorite styles of play that coaches have with your playing background. And I mean, you're tall, right? Like what position did you play in college?
Well, back in the 90s, if you're 6'8", they tell you to go sit down on the block and go down there and bang. But I was the thin athletic type that liked to shoot.
Okay.
I tell the players all the time, I wish I was just born a few years after Dirk, not before him, because now everybody wants a player like that.
Yeah.
So, I hated being put into boxes as a player. I found a college coach that kind of bought into me and my skill set at that time, which wasn't normal. There weren't a lot of players who played like me, where, guard the 4-5, but stretch the floor, faced up.
Coach, you're a trendsetter.
Well, I wish. Yeah. I mean, I tried, but, and so, I had it actually, I found a motion offense that I played in. And I had it kind of described for me by an old coach. saying that if Jesus was a basketball coach, he would have taught the motion offense most likely, because you need to have someone make a pass, someone set a screen. Two people had to do something for one other to
Yeah.
have the opportunity at success scoring. And so, and what I've always liked about the motion offense is, in the many variations of it, is it teaches players how to play,
Hmm.
as opposed to just running a choreographed or set pattern. You're making reads, you have to make decisions, you have to make a variety of passes, learn how to screen, playing with the ball, playing without the ball. And, in well, in the modern age, and with analytics and spacing the floor, utilizing the three, a lot of folks view variations of the motion offense as antiquated or less than
Hmm.
efficient. However, there are so many things that can be taken from it that I think can blend the two worlds. And so I've tinkered with different variations of the motion offense, whether it's the old 3 out 2 in, 4 around 1,
Yeah.
or 5 out. I've had a lot of success with the 5 out, and that's a little bit more of what we're working to do now. And it's fun. It's fun. It keeps you on your toes.
I love getting to hear a little bit about a coach's background, maybe as a player or systems that they were in, because I think that so often that shapes, what we do. And that's my thought was first, okay, if he's a post, I wonder if it is much more of a, what you kind of saw in the Final Four this year, there were three teams that ran that ball through the post, so maybe
Sure.
trends and things that maybe that starts to come back around a little bit, right? But no, it's interesting to hear you as more of a shooter. And I played with a great stretch 4 or 5 RT Gwynn at Baylor, who was 6'9", 6'10", huge arms, and everybody wanted him to be a banger, but that dude could shoot it. He was our best 3-point shooter, and he was underappreciated back then.
Yeah. Well, and another element to that is, and this is where you don't realize how much your time in college impacts you for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
right? I've now going on, gosh, I think it's my 18th year as a head coach. Been coaching, obviously years before that as an assistant, working my way up. But I played with two players, John Bourne, 6'4" ish player, Anthony Higgins, 6'2", that were as good of back to the basket post players as you could have found.
Wow.
And having teammates like that who enabled me to then stretch the 5 defender away from the basket, right?
Yeah.
Our last year we went 35-3. We had a tremendous season. And so what that just left an indelible mark on my just philosophy of basketball is that, Anthony Higgins and John Bourne wouldn't have been the players that they were if it weren't for me in my unique skill set that allowed them to do what they do.
Yeah.
And so I think every team has kind of these different mixes of talent that can be maximized to just play off each other for success. And that's one of the art of coaching, so to speak, is just kind of tinkering with those things and finding ways to put these kids in a place to be successful. And it's kind of funny. I mean, all my teams before I came to Midwestern State were kind of always known as the free flowing, the really good offensive teams. We scored, we defended okay, right? But we haven't been as good offensively since I've been here. We just haven't. And we're working our way through that, what that looks like, but it's made me evolve as a coach and get a whole heck of a lot better on the defensive side, just out of survival. Right.
Why do you think, and I'm just going to, if you don't mind me leaning in a little bit more, why do you think that is the change in maybe what you were kind of known for a little while to, yeah.
Well, the quick answer is back to how I always recruited. I always recruited 4 and 5 year guys that, I mean, they would have, the 10,000 hours, so to speak, of
Man,
pivots and jump stops and, setting screens
it's fun to
before.
get in the mud of offensive actions with dudes like that have
Yeah.
that much time invested in it.
That's exactly right. I mean, where do you finish a cut? There's a big difference between finish a cut at the front of the arc versus underneath the rim, that extra 3 feet
Yeah.
of how much space you create on the floor in a 5-out offense,
Yeah.
right? And until you get them to trust, right? Like it just takes time. And so there have been some things that I'm having to modify and change, because you have to meet the players where they are. I mean, you can't just 2 months of preseason expect to get everything in perfect. No, you have to work your way through it and just keep stacking those skills. Now this spring that I've had this group that we're going to return basically the entirety of our team from last year, just adding a couple pieces. We are so far ahead of the game, but it's only because now we're building off of what we've spent 7, 8 months working on, that when the new guys come in,
Yeah.
they'll fall in line seeing their teammates already doing these things. They won't realize what the process and how difficult it was to get them to this point, right? So I think that that's a big component of it.
I think the great idea there about having maybe a style of play that you love, but it's not a rigid system.
Sure.
The danger of the rigid system is, what if the players that you have aren't good at that? It's not what could make them successful, but you don't want to throw out what you love and what you believe in. So if it's more conceptual, concept based, then you can tinker and you can adjust and you can post a 6'2" guy and you can stretch the bigger dude, and or flip it if it's more of a traditional feel where like we need this guy in. But I think that's kind of where maybe failure helped me go from, okay, I'm not a system coach. Like, I have a style of play that I love and a way that basketball works to me, that I think when I'm teaching it to my players, the passion comes through, that the belief that I have can transfer to become their belief, but not so rigid that I'm going to lose or make my players suffer because of a system that I'm known for or I think is right.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think you touched on it there. There, like, kind of two things I took away from that is, number one, you have to be able to teach it, right? It's one of the things that has always driven me nuts in my career is, you go to a clinic and, oh, they run this. This is the pattern. Well, no. My question is always, well, how do you teach it? If you can't teach it, right, everything that goes into it, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not going to work very well.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next piece of it is, you talked about, your passion within the system. Players aren't stupid. They're going to know if you have a belief in this, and they will, as you said, they will take on your belief over the course of time once they see it working. And, if you don't have that ability to teach it and that ability to believe in it yourself wholeheartedly, it's just not going to happen. But when it does, it's pretty special.
Coach, I think that you nailed something there too. Like, we need to maybe watch film of ourselves in games and just, without knowing the situation, what's happening, answer this question. Do I look like I enjoy what I'm watching right now? Yeah. Like, I think that's important. I think our players, most of them deep down, they are pleasers. And especially if the relationship is built where I want them to enjoy being coached by me and they want me to enjoy coaching them. If that relationship is there, do we show disgust for what product is on the floor, more than appreciation for the try and that they're trying to do what we're asking them to do, and we're really close? I don't know. I would think, like, there's times where if I stopped it, somebody would say, it doesn't look like you like your team and what they're doing. And if that's the case, how do you play for that? Like, how do you continue to fight for somebody or in a system like that and that's where Gannon Baker, that a big nugget I got from him was celebrate the try. And I think, because if you're now, I'm not talking about lack of effort. If there's lack of effort, then there needs to be changes. We got to go back to that onboarding culture piece that we somehow missed out on, right? But I don't know, Coach, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's something that I struggle with. Like I'm just by nature, I mean, I'm loud. All right. I'm obscenely competitive. If it's a game of cards with my wife and kids, I'm playing domino. Like it doesn't matter. Like I'm competitive as all get out. And a lot of times, like what I've found, throughout the course of my career is a lot of players will, misconstrue my intensity as
Yeah.
anger. I can be happy but they just view things through a different lens. And
Mhm.
officials, this is one where I'm 6'8", I'm loud. When I'm going to get on an official, you will always see me take a knee. I'll take a
Oh,
knee next to him just
yeah.
because I don't want to stand over someone I'm a foot taller than and look like I'm berating them. And I don't do that very often where I get on the officials, but
That's a
but
great nugget though. Yeah.
it's just all part of it there in terms of I've had to grow in, I was the player that someone made a nice screen or a nice pass, I was going to say something, right? And so as I've gone on in my coaching career, I really try to shout those other things out like in the course of play.
Yeah.
Right. If we have a nice drive to the basket for a layup and we call it a smash, that legal, illegal screen where you're down there pretending to post up, but really all you're doing is just blocking a guy out so he can't rotate over as a tag defender. That guy gets nothing in the stat sheet, but we make the layup and everybody's clapping their hands, cheering on the guy who made the layup or the dunk. And I'm going to say something, great job, smash, or whatever the player's name is, or just
Yeah.
kind of shout him out. Like I try to do a lot of that as a coach now more, because I want them to see me more as an encourager, not someone who's just constantly demanding perfection. But of course, every coach, we always want perfection. There's always something that can be done better on every play, but you just don't need to point it out in the moment.
And I think to your point, I think you you've heard this before, like you can coach players hard when they know that you care about them. And I think coach them hard, that's taken normally almost like favorites. It's taken in a negative way. I don't think coaching them hard means hit them, hammer them. But I think high expectations, a lot of energy, and then you can coach the way you're talking about, and then be okay, and them not fall if the relationship piece is there. But if they
Yeah.
don't understand, and that's where I think great coaches are, they're master communicators.
Yeah.
They communicate verbally for sure, but non-verbally, they're very conscious of what, like somebody said, Steve Kerr sits and stands strategically throughout the game, never at the same time and never for the same thing. So, like, if he only sat down when things are bad, we all know what that means. If he only stood up when he's hyped up and fired up, but I think there's that part of like you mentioned early on, the art of coaching where, man, it's fun. It almost becomes fun to get into those weeds of how do I become the best at this craft that I'm a part of. And it sounds like that's what you think about. And man, kneeling, I would have never thought, because I'm only 6'3", but there are some referees that I'm taller than. And if I come at them, big chest and kind of fired up, who knows what that looks like or feels like. Kneeling
You're
and
exactly
little
right.
nuggets like that, coach, that's huge.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.